All right, going to read from this book now. A lot of volumes of this scholarly work right here. A lot of good information that we're going to go over that I haven't even gone over. I've been holding these books too. I'd be forgetting what I have here stored or what I want to read. When they're talking about discovering certain things they found in the mounds, out of place artifacts and tablets with, old world inscriptions. So let's talk about what they found here in Virginia. So again, this is in reference to the Grave Creek Mound, as it says here, in the Ohio River Valley in West Virginia. It's one of the largest conical type burial mounds in the United States. It says present-day Moundsville has developed around it near the banks of the Ohio River. The first recorded excavation of the mound took place in 1838. It was conducted by local amateurs Abelard Tomlinson and Thomas Biggs. All right, that's what we're going to read about right now and what they found. So this is what they found, the Grave Creek stone. We're going to read about it. It says here, small sandstone disc inscribed on one side with some 25 characters purportedly discovered in 1838 at Grave Creek Mound. All right. Again, in West Virginia. Now look what it says. If genuine, it could provide evidence of pre-Columbian writing. All right. If they don't want it to be true, but we know this is the true old world, right? The only known image of the actual stone is a photograph of items in the E.H. Davis collection before the majority of the collection was sold to the Blackmore Museum, now part of the British Museum. So if this was fake, why would the British Museum buy fake stuff? Huh? And it says here, the Grave Creek stone and a plaster cast of the stone in the collection of the Smithsonian Museum. You guys already know what the Smithsonian does. All right, so back in the book, it's called Archives of Aboriginal Knowledge, containing all the original papers laid before Congress, respecting the history, antiquities, language, ethnology, pictography, rites, superstitions, and mythology of the Indian tribes of the United States by Henry R. Schoolcraft, LLD. This is volume 1 out of 6, right? This is from 1860. And I go to page 124 of this book, down at the bottom paragraph. Notice of an inscription in antique characters found on a tabular stone or amulet in one of the western tumuli of probably the beginning of the 16th century. The discovery of an inscription in a large tumulus near Wheeling in western Virginia gives an importance to the opening of that mound, which it would not otherwise possess. This archaeological discovery was made, as Mr. Abelard Tomlinson, the proprietor, states, Vide Western Pioneer, on the 16th of June, 1838. The country had then been settled 57 years and had been first explored 2 years earlier. Mr. Jesse Tomlinson, the original proprietor and uncle of Abelard, had carefully guarded it and prevented any excavations from being made or any of the forest trees with which it was covered from being cut. He yielded at length to the public curiosity to explore its contents, when his nephew, Abelard Tomlinson, entered into an arrangement with some other persons to execute the work on a fixed plan of excavation. They ran a horizontal gallery into its center and sunk a shaft from its top to intersect this adit, as represented in Plate 12, Figure 1. Some of the things they found here in this mound. Okay. Continuing, it says, to penetrate a tumulus of earth of 333 feet in circumference and 70 feet in height, with an unbroken surface bearing large trees, was not a light work, and it appears that the labor of several hands for a number of months was required. The results, which have been recorded in the pages of the American Pioneer, volume 2D, page 197, were the discovery of 2 rude tombs containing skeletons and a number of beads, amulets, and shells, but nothing indicative of an unusual civilization in the builders of this tumulus, except the inscription stone. Even if the block prints, discoidal stones, siphons of steatite, and watchtowers hereafter to be noticed, be thought to denote a higher state of want than the Indian tribes had, they were not the ones of high civilization. Little or no importance appears to have been attached to the inscription for several years. The men engaged in the work were no archaeologists. It was supposed to be in Indian characters, and they are called hieroglyphics by Mr. Townsend, a writer who described the opening of the mound in a letter, which was published in the Cincinnati Chronicle, a weekly gazette, of February 2nd, 1839. He also gave a drawing of the inscription. A copy of this paper was transmitted to me by a friend, having at the same time a copy of Mr. Marsh's grammar of the Icelandic of 1838, the appendix to which contains the Runic alphabet. I observed some corresponding characters. He's saying he saw some Runic characters from Iceland that match the Grave Creek tablet they found there in West Virginia. I remember what we're reading. This is a very scholarly book. By reference to an inscription from Dr. Plott's History of Staffordshire, it was also seen that there were several of the characters quite identical with the ancient form of the Celtic alphabet. Okay, Celtic. Grave Creek Stone in West Virginia, a tablet they found there in this mound, all right, has Runic Celtic characters, all right, but they're looking at the original, as employed in Britain in the so-called stick book, just like the ones in the stick book. A copy of the inscription, Townsend's copy, was transmitted to Professor Raffin at Copenhagen, the distinguished secretary of the Royal Society of Northern Antiquaries. Mr. Raffin does not find it to be Runic, but is disposed to consider the inscription Celtiberic, all right? Iberian Celtic, Celtic Iberian, correlating with all the other findings here. Like in the book we read, America BC, and the other book in plain sight. We're going to start reading more chapters of that. All these inscriptions being found all over the Americas. Old world inscriptions, so-called old world. This is the true old world. So you got all these scholars letting you know, hey, this looks Runic. Hey, no, this looks Celtic. Oh, no, I think it looks more Celtiberic. Mr. Albert M. Tomlinson states in a letter above referred to that he commenced opening the mound on the 19th of March, 1838, that he wrought at the excavation himself, and that he found the first or lower vault on the 4th of April, and the second or upper vault on the 16th of June of that year, that the osseous remains of 2 human skeletons in a state of decay were found in the first, one of which had 650 beads, and a small joke-shaped ornament or implement with 2 perforations. The other was without any ornament whatever. That the upper vault contained the remains of but 1 skeleton and a great number of trinkets, the chief of which were 1,700 bone beads, 500 seashells, 150 pieces of mica, 5 copper wrist and arm bands, and a small flat stone, of which he furnishes a facsimile. All right, this was all found with that skeleton. Very important person, most likely, right? This is page 195. They say you can find this, about 3/8 of an inch thick with an engraving. Continues, says Dr. Willis de Haas of Grave Creek has recently, 1850, brought to Washington the original stone, a facsimile of which is given by Captain S. Eastman. He has also copied its reverse. These drawings accurately correspond with the copy published by the American Ethnological Society in 1846. The same artist has also copied the ancient Celtic inscription before referred to. Also, a curious device found in one of the minor mounds at Grave Creek Flats, and a circular stone without inscription, but identical in material with the inscription stone. These facts will enable the reader to form his own judgment in the matter. All right, so I want to show you guys what they have here when they're saying figure 1, figure 5, 4. All right, so here's the actual Grave Creek tablet. As you guys can see, the Runic and what they're saying, Celtic, Iberic, or Libyan. They all argue what it is. You know, this is the true old world. And this is a comparison, I believe, of what they were saying with the Celtic. So as you guys can see, very identical. All right. Literally a match. And again, they're finding this in West Virginia in that mound. And I guess a drawing of the skull. As it says here, stones with inscriptions and a skull from Grave Creek Mound. This is what they're finding here. Celtic, Iberian characters in West Virginia. Grave Creek Flats appear to have been the site of an ancient Indian town of importance. 7 mounds or their remains still existed upon these flats in 1844. Although the plow and the spade had done much to obliterate the smaller ones, there were also traces of a large circular work embracing a part of the public road leading northeast to the hills. The relation of these several objects is shown by plate 39. After crossing this low ground, there were also traces of circumvallation on the more elevated level grounds, and on rising the hills to Parr's Point, there was still, quite entire and undisturbed, the ruins of a tower or lookout upon a commanding point of ground on the farm of Mr. Micheltree. This work had been commenced by excavating the earth several feet and walling it up with rough stones in the manner of a well. From the quantity of fallen stones around and within this excavation, this tower must have been many feet above the ground. Every one of those stones of which it is composed must have been carried up the acclivity for nearly a mile, as the surface of the hills consists entirely of a loam and loose soil. Right? They're talking about these ancient ruins that the American Indians had here. This is before Europeans got here. Continues, says the inscription of this tumulus, if it be true, is foreign. All right. They're saying it's foreign because they look so much like the Celtic, right? The question of its genuineness must rest on the veracity of Mr. Tomlinson and his neighbors who have united in his statements. On the score of its being of Iberic origin, the account of Dr. Clemens, who is the least favorable to the antiquity of the mound, opposes no bar to a foreign theory, given as his facts do the date of 1538. So this guy is saying that the Spanish brought it, right? And then they buried it in the mound, you know. a lot of people don't want to accept this is the true old world. So he gives it the date of 1538, puts it 26 years after the discovery of Florida by De Leon, and 1 year subsequent to the discovery of the mouth of the Mississippi by Narvaez. A stronger objection is found in the inability of the Copenhagen antiquarians to read it. While acknowledging a large portion of its characters to be in the Spanish type of the Celtic, the following characters are common, it will be seen, to the inscription at Dighton Rock and Grave Creek Mound, namely. All right, and they show you these ones. A still greater amount of resemblance to it appears in the stick book character of the ancient British Celtic. Ancient British Celtic, not just Spanish Celtic. This is perceived in the characters, all right? Look at that. Which are common to both inscriptions, namely the Celtic and the Virginic, the one in Virginia. Same. There would appear to be some grounds here for the Welsh tradition of Madoc. All right, remember Madoc supposedly came here. We got a future video on all this. Who is Madoc? All right, we have thus 3 inscriptions which appear to have been made in the same mixed characters or to have something in common. Elements of an alphabet are seen which were known to many nations of Western Europe and were originally derivative from the banks of the Mediterranean before the introduction of the Roman alphabet. So again, this is what they're finding in Virginia, all right, matching the ancient British Celtic. All right, so real quick, I just want to show you that they actually found another stone with similar inscriptions in the same area. It says, every fact relating to asserted inscriptions of an ancient date on this continent requires the closest scrutiny, but we are not at liberty to deny record to any well-attested report, all right? He's literally telling you, but if the shoe fits, if they're finding this in the mound, you cannot deny it, all right? Any record with a well-attested report. There was found in one of the group of minor mounds of the Grave Creek Flats in the Ohio Valley a small globular stone, about 1.5 inches in diameter, containing some devices which resembled those of the inscribed stone alleged to have been found by Mr. Tomlinson, all right? So they actually found another stone which actually resembles what Mr. Tomlinson found, right? The Grave Creek tablet. A cast of this stone was presented to me in 1844 during a visit to that place by Mr. Wills de Haas, of which a copy with its inscriptive matter is given in plate 38, figure 4. The characters on this stone appear to be as follows, all right? You see that? All right, so this is what they're talking about right here, okay? There is some eccentricity in the forms of the letters. The first is recognized on the Dighton Rock. Nothing is more demonstrable than that whatever has emanated in the graphic or inscriptive art on this continent from the red race does not aspire above the simple art of pictography. and that wherever an alphabet of any kind is variable discovered, it must have had a foreign origin. By granting belief to anything contravening this state of art, we at first deceive ourselves and then lend our influence to diffuse error. Oh, that's deep right there. So I just wanted to show you guys they finding these inscriptions in that same area all over the place. That's why the museum, the British Museum has it. That's why they're writing about it because they cannot prove it wrong. All right, I'm in the book Unearthing Ancient America, the lost sagas of conquerors, castaways, and scoundrels. This is by Frank Joseph. It says here, The Lost Inscription of Grey Creek by Wayne May. All right, guys, I'm going to start down here. It says here the discovery 170 years ago of a tablet inscribed with an ancient Old World text should have rewritten American history books. And that's something very important he just said there, guys. They've been holding our progress back. They've been holding this information from us, the truth about ancient America. This should have rewritten history. Instead, the priceless find was condemned by officials as a fake, shamefully discarded and forgotten by all but a few antiquarians. Here is the story of this remarkable find, hard evidence for Hebrew refugees arriving in West Virginia during the early Roman era. And they're talking about the lost inscription of Grave Creek, all right? So this is another writing on it. We're going to get more in depth into it. It says, in January 2006, I visited the grandest earthwork of its kind in North America. At 62 feet high, 240 feet across, at its base, Grave Creek Mound towers near the Ohio River, about 10 miles south of Wheeling, West Virginia. Seeing this immense earthwork in person was the fulfillment of an old dream, and the local museum proved to be an enlightening experience in itself. Especially interesting was a showcase replica of the famous Grave Creek tablet, captioned with a surprisingly impartial text that suggested the controversial object excavated from the mound may have had overseas origins after all. All right, but remember, America's the true old world. They're looking at it in reverse. The original tablet was a sandstone disc about 1/7/8 inches wide and 1.5 inches high, and inscribed on one side with an inscrutable, though apparently Semitic text. As Houston McCullough of the Midwest Epigraphic Society writes in the Journal of the New England Antiquities Research Association, in 1868, the inscription belonged to the collection of E.H. Davis before being purchased by the Blackmore Museum, now the British Museum, which states that the Grave Creek stone is not at present in the museum's Squire and Davis collections. Davis made a plaster cast of the stone and deposited it in the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of Natural History, right? You know how they hide things. So they, in fact, have 4 casts of the stone. It is not known where the stone itself is today, all right? So this guy, Houston McCullough, is letting you know they're hiding the stone today. Where is it? They don't want people to know about it. It's going to show where's the origin of these nations from, huh? According to late 19th century antiquarian E. Thomas Hemans in his book, West Virginia Antiquities, these are all sources you guys can verify. Grave Creek Mound is the preeminent archaeological monument in West Virginia and the largest conical earth mound in the New World. West Virginia geological and economic surveyors carried out 2 phases of field investigation here in 1975 and 1976, followed by extensive laboratory analysis. This project, conducted on the terms of an agreement with the Department of Natural Resources, is the first systematic archaeological work at Grave Creek Mound since it was penetrated by tunnels in 1838. Core drilling revealed carbon material circa 250 BC. All right, with their, carbon date and their own little science. This is going minimum 250 BC, all right? And scholars estimate the approximate 3 million basket loads of earth, equivalent to some 57 tons, were required to erect the 70 plus foot high mound. It was encircled by a moat or ditch, its purpose unknown, save perhaps a ceremonial barrier to ritually define sacred burials. As with many similar sites, other peoples came and went, leaving their mark on this vast area long after the original builders vanished. Archaeologists refer to them as the Adena, all right? This is part of the Adena culture, coming out of Ohio, all right? Most likely same people, who belong to the early woodland period from around 1000 BC to 100 BC, okay? 1000 BC, that's what we're talking about here. Certainly the most controversial item associated with the mound is the Grave Creek tablet, which was unearthed from inside the earthwork itself. Mainstream scholars know the object must be an obvious fake because it carried an inscription. Archaeological dogma holds that no written language existed in the Americas before the arrival of modern Europeans, so this is why they dismiss things. Now remember, this is part of manifest destiny. Anything pre-Columbian found here is considered savage. We're going to get that again. Before that, continuing says, despite academic insistence, however, some independent investigators point to a number of Adena artifacts that at least suggest that an ancient syllabary of some kind existed in ancient America. These include the Bat Creek stone, the Ohio Decalogue stone, an apparent Hebrew prayer stone dating to the 3rd century BC, the Wilmington tablet, a highly sophisticated design, and an estimated 2,000 Michigan tablets. All right? We're going to be getting into that more and more, likewise enumerated by Deal. Although university-trained researchers acknowledge the pre-Columbian provenance of at least some of these objects, their identification as script is not deemed worthy of consideration, right? So they've been, gatekeeping literally because it doesn't fit their history, what they want the Indians to be, these savages running around half naked, with no written language or script, all the false history. Real quick, before we continue, we're going to get a few words from our old buddy Glenn Beck regarding manifest destiny and why they don't accept tablets like the Grave Creek stone here.
This is the Smithsonian Annual Report, 1882-1883. This is John Wesley Howell. This is an original copy. John Wesley Howell in 1789. Again, Powell. This is the director of the Bureau of Ethnology at the Smithsonian Institute. He said this: artifacts found prior to Christopher Columbus's arrival would be considered illegitimate by the Smithsonian. Only the savage Indian culture would be observed, and this created the artificial barrier to science. Only the savage. Science was colluding with government because of commerce, and religion was involved. Now, why do I tell you all this stuff? Not because I'm an Indian expert or anything else. You got to do your own homework. I just found out about this stuff. I'm amazed by it. I don't know what the answer is on this. The history that has been erased in our nation, and in particular with the Native Americans, happened because it didn't fit the story they created, manifest destiny. It only works when Indians were savages, and they had to have savages for commerce and government to expand. The ancient artifacts prove otherwise. Why aren't we looking into those? Peter Lill.
All right, so continuing in the book, Unearthing Ancient America. Again, we're talking about the Grave Creek stone. You guys just heard Glenn Beck. It's part of their destiny to hide all this stuff. It's part of their agenda. It says here in 1885, newspaper publisher J.P. McLean described in an article entitled "The Grave Creek Stone Was Real" just what early investigators found when they dug into the earthwork. An excavation was made towards the center of the north side of the mound, 10 feet in height and 111 feet long, along the original surface of the ground. At the end of this ditch was a vault 12 feet long by 8 wide and 7 deep. Upright timbers had been placed along the sides of the vault, which supported other timbers thrown across, which served for a roof. Over these timbers had been thrown loose stones such as is found in the neighborhood. The timbers were rotten, and the stones had tumbled into the vault. In this vault were found 2 skeletons, one of which was surrounded by 650 beads composed of seashells and a bone ornament 6 inches long. From the top of the mound, a shaft was sunk, and at the depth of 32 feet from the bottom, another vault was found containing skeletons surrounded by over 2,000 discs cut from shells. 250 pieces of mica, 17 bone heads, and copper bracelets and rings weighing 17 ounces, all right? Just like we were getting in the other book. It was in this vault that the inscribed stone was found on the 16th of the following year in 1838, all right? So no Spanish put that in there. They would have took that. They would have took all these discs and, they would have definitely looted this mound, not bury things in it and leave it perfectly like there was never nobody in there. From a letter written to Mr. P.P. Cherry, March 7th, 1878, Mr. Tomlinson, it would appear that the stone was found at the end of a second drift, which was excavated from the side of the mound to the upper vault. After striking the second vault, the men from the first vault drilled upward until the second fell to the bottom. The inscribed stone is an oval disc of white sandstone, nearly circular in form, about 3/4 of an inch thick and an inch and a half in diameter. On one of the flat surfaces are engraved 3 lines of unknown characters. That the stone or tablet was deemed of some importance by the owner is proven from the fact of its having been entombed with him. It may have possessed to him some mysterious importance in his journey to the future state of existence, and hence a charm to protect him from the evil influences that might beset him. No doubt was ever cast on the authenticity of this stone until nearly 10 years after its discovery. Ever since, professional skeptics have not lamented the Grave Creek's tablet's disappearance. West Virginia's University's website succinctly expresses the mainstream science party line. Today, most archaeologists consider the tablet to be fraudulent because similar examples have never been found, all right? But, we just proved that's wrong. We just read that out of the book, right? They found a similar stone with the same inscriptions in the same area, and they have it reported in that book. And that's why he goes wrong. In 1922, a farmer working in his field in Morrison, Tennessee, plowed up a stone similar in size to the Grave Creek tablet, covered with precisely the same inscription, symbol for symbol. The farmer knew nothing of its West Virginia twin, nor made any effort to profit from his accidental discovery in any way. Since then, 2 more stones, one in Ohio County, the other near Braxton Creek, West Virginia, were found emblazoned with identical written characters incised on the Grave Creek and Morrison tablets. Though here, too, their discoveries made no claims to fame or fortune, and in fact were ignorant of the controversy. Okay, so again, they're finding inscriptions and tablets like this all over. It's no doubt. It's not just the Grave Creek tablet. It's just more icing on the cake, really. It's more proof, more correlation. This is the true old world. These tablets are original to ancient America that they're finding. The Grave Creek tablet is physical proof that voyagers from the ancient world did, after all, cross the vast ocean to successfully establish themselves in what would much later become West Virginia. Okay, so again, dodge the hijack. We were navigating anciently. Remember my ancient navigational videos? And remember what we read about Indians being in ancient Rome over there. They're creating a bust over them. Columbus met Indians in Ireland. We know corn, turkeys, and all that was brought to the ancient Welsh. They had corn and wild American turkeys. Well, we were trading, going back and forth since ancient times. We were the true mariners. I already did a video showing that the Stone Fears in Costa Rica, that was a navigational university over there, a land of astronomers who were navigators as well. These were the first navigators. They learned astronomy first. Check out that video if you haven't already. So again, dodge the hijack. When they're saying they're coming from over there, they're always seeing it in reverse only. Their surviving mound in West Virginia is therefore more than a sepulture for the long dead, but a monument to the pre-Columbian discoverers of America, right? Nobody discovered America because there was already people here since creation. All this land. Continues, says the Grave Creek tablets' archaeological authenticity and actual significance were publicly disclosed at 2007's Ancient American Conference in Wilmington, Ohio. All right, they didn't tell people this. By renowned West Virginia epigrapher Ida Jane Gallagher. She revealed that the written text was commensurate with a form of Paleo Hebrew contemporary with the construction of the earthworks itself in 250 BC. Likewise, appropriate for a burial mound, the brief inscription is a mortuary statement referring probably to one of the two men interred in the structure more than 22 centuries ago. She cites the work of Dr. Barry Fell, there we go, from the book America BC, right, that we have gone over and we're going to continue to go over in future videos. Professor of Invertebrate Zoology at the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology, where he was an accomplished and respected marine biologist. According to his Wikipedia biographer, applying his scientific expertise to the decipherment of pre-Columbian inscriptions, Dr. Fell found that many of them resulted from contacts between Native Americans with overseas visitors from the ancient world. All right, again, always they're trying to look at it in reverse. Again, America is the true old world. But again, all these people are letting you know this is real, this is authentic. The Grave Creek Stone, something you didn't know about, containing all those languages, right? Basically, also a form of Paleo Hebrew, which is what they call in Phoenician, right? A native of Beckley, West Virginia, Ida Gallagher is a retired school teacher in English, journalism, and history with a BS and MA in education from West Virginia University. She likewise served as a college academic counselor at C.W. Post College and assistant to the Dean of Women at Adelphi University. With the publication of numerous articles and photographs in newspapers, popular magazines, and scholarly journals, she is a member of the New England Antiquities Research Association, the Ancient American Artifact Preservation Foundation, Early Sites Research Society, and the Epigraphic Society, which we're very familiar with now. We're getting into all these inscriptions being found in all these books, these people dealing or being actually members of the Epigraphic Society. So again, we're going to get a lot of their research in future videos, and this is part of it right here. Again, as it says here, the Grave Creek Tablet is genuine by Ida Jane Meadows Gallagher. The Grave Creek Tablet, an oval grayish sandstone tablet, started a great debate because 3 lines of unknown alphabetic characters were inscribed on one side of the object. One hieroglyphic sign beneath the alphabetic inscription resembles a cross with elongated arms, with the profile of a bird's head on the end of the right arm and a dot under the left arm. One horizontal line is incised beneath the cross. And again, here's a picture of it. All right. Modern recreation of the Grave Creek Tablet. The original disappeared during the last century. They got it hidden up. The Smithsonian Institute, hey, let it go, Smithsonian, let it go. Show it to the people. Soon after the Grave Creek Tablet was discovered, numerous unsuccessful attempts were made to decipher and read the inscription. The result was that some people poked fun at a variety of translations, which cast doubt on the tablet's authenticity. David Diringer's Recovery of Ancient Iberic Values in 1968, however, enabled Dr. Barry Feld to make the first sensible translation. Published in 1976, he identified the alphabet as South Iberic, from Roman era or pre-Roman Spain, and translated the 3 lines on the Grave Creek Tablet, reading from right to left in the Semitic manner. The mound raised on high for Tasak, or Isaac, Tasak, Isaac, Tasak, this tile, his queen caused to be made. All right, so that's part of the translation they're saying here, right? Barry Fell from the Epigraphic Society. Donald Buchanan, author of a definitive work on the language, The Decipherment of Southwest Iberic, confirmed Fell's decipherment with minor changes in the wording. Tumulus in honor of Tadak. His wife caused this engraved tile to be inscribed. Okay, so something like that's what it's really saying. You see, this is a real history we're talking about here. Ancient people in America, the true promised land. Years of controversy about the authenticity of this tiny tablet followed. On-site accounts of the artifact's removal from the mound should disprove rumors describing the tablet as fake, that it was planted, with the burial of a single male in the upper tomb of the earth's work when it was excavated. The Grave Creek Tablet was generally recognized as genuine artifact. Eyewitnesses to his discovery made the following statements. Dr. James W. Clemens, a respected Wheeling, West Virginia physician, wrote the earliest known account of the discovery of the tablet He and Whelan newspaper publisher J.E. Wharton watched the Mound excavation. Clemens' account was published shortly after the tablet was found. It stated Abelard Tomlinson's, Thomas Biggs, myself, and others were present when the stone was discovered with the copper bracelets and shell necklaces, all right? Eyewitness accounts. So all the other stuff people are saying is much later. They're just trying to hide this artifact because it would rewrite history. At this time, Dr. S.G. Morton was writing Crania Americana when he asked Dr. Clemens to visit the Grave Creek Mound and sent him a report on the skulls found in the structure. Clemens reported the following information to Morton. In this vault, a large skeleton was found, with a necklace composed of perforated shells, 2 copper bracelets, and a curiously inscribed or hieroglyphic stone, the characters of which are distinctly traced in parallel lines. These curiosities were all found together near the skeleton. The stone is now in my possession, and I have had an exact facsimile of it taken. Unfortunately, Morton's book did not include any reference to the inscribed tablet, or he left it out. His work was devoted exclusively to the study of skulls of ancient man. The omission nonetheless bred serious controversy. In 1846, Ephraim George Squire published a booklet in which he argued that because Crania Americana made no reference to the Grave Creek tablet, the most remarkable artifact found in the mound, the object must be fake. So just because Morton didn't publish or talk about it, it was fake. He didn't care about it. All he cared about was the skulls. So that's not a reason why it would be fake. You see what they're going off here? Or at least Squire was going off? Squire suggested that the motive for faking the tablet was to attract visitors to the Grave Creek Mound Museum, which requires a small admissions charge. Now remember that Squires works for the Smithsonian. All right, Davis the Squire. Squire's innuendo was a serious affront to the Tomlinson family who owned the mound and operated the little museum. Distinguished etymologist Henry R. Schoolcraft, all right, that's the book we just read, the scholarly book, all right, we read first, entered the fray. He angrily characterized Squire's accusations as offensive to the truth. Others took sides pro and con until rumor overcame truth. All right, rumors over truth. That's what they believed, the rumors. Today, most professional archaeologists generally regard the Grave Creek tablet as a hoax. All right, those are just gatekeepers, you mean. Modern gatekeepers. Yet its story actually demonstrates how uniform statements were perpetuated by successive writers and archaeologists who failed to check out the facts. Events associated with the discovery and decipherment of the Grave Creek tablet show how innuendo and repetition of false information can cast doubt on an authentic artifact. All right, this was an authentic artifact that they're hiding today. Researchers must assemble factual information before announcing new finds. It is difficult to correct errors previously accepted as truth. Critics of the find accused Aberland Tomlinson, who was in charge of opening the mound, of fraudulently producing the Grave Creek tablet. But in 1876, Tomlinson clearly recalled finding the artifact. I was carefully removing the dirt, which was mostly of decayed timber, when I uncovered the inscribed stone. The inscription being up, it took my attention. I examined it, found it to be the work of the ancients. I then placed it with the other relics. Peter B. Khaled helped with the excavation of the mound. I am the one that found it first. He testified in 1878 it was not in its original bed when first found. It was taken out of the stone arch in a wheelbarrow and emptied outside. As for anyone placing the inscribed stone there, planting it, it could not have been done. According to J.E. Wharton, the Wheeling newspaper editor who accompanied Dr. Clemens at the mound excavation, in the forenoon they struck the center of the vault and bought out decayed wood. Among the dirt was bought out the inscribed stone and picked up by one of us from the loose dirt. Khaled? A fraud was impossible. When I first saw it, it was being handed to Dr. Gans with some of the herbs still clinging to it. But who was responsible for the brief text? Was it a visiting scribe or a native Adena Indian who learned South Iberic alphabet? He learned, what if that's what his language was? Or what if you're calling it South Iberic when it was actually something else older than that? Who brought it to the Iberic people? How did they learn it? You get it? overseas tutors? Who are the real tutors? Research suggests that the ancient Iberians followed the Dina trade routes and may have, probably, maybe, had extensive contact with the prehistoric inhabitants of North America. Yes, they did, but we're talking about in reverse. We went everywhere, trading, bringing corn, all that from here. Any case, the archaeological authenticity of West Virginia's Grave Creek tablet is certain. All right, it is certain. What happened that day, the excavation, it was real. People were there, they recorded it. The first 10 years, it was authentic. The British Museum has it last. They had it last. It's lost right now. They're hiding it. Even if the identity of its author is not. We're going to read from this book. We've read chapter 1 of this, or part 1 of this book, already in a previous part of this series. This book is called Mysteries of Ancient America, Uncovering the Forbidden by Fritz Zimmermann. And we go to this part of the book. It's like part 2 or chapter 2, Ancient Roads. And it starts out here saying, quoting from the American Antiquarian, Volume 5, from 1898. It is written there, the locality, Great Miami River, continuous lines of pavements or rows of burned stone, 40 or 50 yards long, on the banks of the Ohio River, 20 inches to 5 feet below the top of the bank. The pavements, called macadamized roads, have been noticed on the banks of the Allegheny River. These are probably the fire beds. Has anyone evidence to the contrary? A prehistoric canal connecting 2 rivers in Illinois, also several pieces of masonry exposed in a sandbank after a storm and covered up again. So again, that was from the American Antiquarian, Volume 5, 1898. Continues, says, History and Progress of the County of Marion, West Virginia. All right, that's a book from 1880. And it says on this book, upon Fort Hill, about 2 miles north of Fairmont, were found traces of an aboriginal fort along the bank of the Monongahela River and running through Palatine, where the earth has been washed away by freshets, can be seen traces of an old macadamized road. It is some feet below the surface and can be traced for quite a distance. The bed of the road seems to vary from 10 to 14 inches in thickness, and the stone is broken with great regularity. The earth above the bed is black and presents somewhat the appearance of an alluvial deposit. It is very probable that this deposit formed the bed of what we now call a macadamized road. At some former period of the world, since the settlement of the county, skeletons have been found at various times in the vicinity of Bootsville and other towns. Continuing, says, now and long ago, history of Marion County, West Virginia. The history of these people of mystery, scarce as it is in our valley, exists only in remnants of certain of their works, fragments of a stone and mussel road, which was devised, graded, and macadamized in most distant times, perhaps 2,000 years ago, and in certain clues of earth, which enabled the first known civilized visitors here to see and examine where once a strange fort had been. Evidence of these ancient was partially destroyed by the settlers' plow, yet certainly some evidence of these works remain. All right, they're letting you know that when the European settlers got here, there was already forts, or what they're calling a strange fort. You know, it could have been something else. Now I was going to talk about the Serpentine enclosure at Holt, West Virginia, with a mussel shell road that ran in front of the work. We're going to see a drawing of that. Mussel shells have been reported in many of the burial mounds along the Ohio and Monongahela rivers. All right, so this is a drawing he has on the previous page. It says here, Mussel Shell Road. This is the road they found, and these are the mounds. So the road leads to the mounds, okay? And here's the river. So again, they're finding these ancient roads, pre-Columbian. You know, before 1492, these roads were already here. Many of the highways and roads we use today are actually indigenous trails or roads they used. The most important sites of prehistoric events in the present Marion County are the location of the ancient earthen fort at near Holt, and that of the Stone Mussel Shell Road on the east bank of the Monongahela between the mouth of the Tigard Valley River and Little Creek at Catawba. Here, by the Monongahela, on the Great Flats and the high hills must have been a center of considerable activity 1,000 or so years ago. And before, the ancient fort here on the largest flat was said to have occupied about 7 acres. Beneath it, along the river lay the road, said to have been about 9 feet wide and 14 inches thick, composed of knapped stone, set in a mortar of crushed mussel shells. The fort and this road were not products of people's imagination. Indeed, no, evidence of their existence is well founded. Price remembered seeing parts of the prehistoric road and said it was made of small broken stones and mussel shell mortar. Some places it was fairly solid, he said, but mostly it came apart when it was uncovered and rained on. The road was pretty much destroyed when grading was done for the FM&P Railroad. All right, the railroads destroyed a lot of these roads. Maybe the railroads are actually following old, trails or roads. John Prick's account of the road, it left the river where the path leaves it now and came over to the bridge and went down the river to Newport, Catawba, where it ended. The Stone Mussel Road was always said to end at Little Creek. It was the opinion of 23 people interviewed that it had begun just below the mouth of the Tigard Valley River and had ended up at Little Creek, and that except for about half a mile on the cricket land, it followed the east bank of the river, very near the water, from the beginning to end, and that almost all of it that had not been destroyed when the FM&P Railroad was constructed had come underwater when the first locks were built. Underwater now. And here they got a picture of a famous trail called LaSalle's Trail. As you guys can see here in the dots, it says Historic Portage Trail, LaSalle Route. It says the Portage Trail at the landing is still visible within the city limits of South Bend, Indiana. The trail is no longer used, but thousands of years of people walking this path has made the earth a hard pan where nothing grows. If you were standing here in 1670, you would have seen LaSalle coming up this trail en route to discovering the Mississippi River. The locations of many ancient trails were investigated, but this is one of the few that can still be seen in the Midwest.